Next up, another comedy from around that same era. I think it was a year later in 2016. And said comedy is called The Boss. The Boss stars Melissa McCarthy as the main actress in this movie, or sorry, actor. They're all called actors now. I don't know. And Kristen Bell. They're kind of the two main feature attractions in this movie. And Melissa McCarthy plays this wealthy business tycoon named Michelle Darnell. Michelle had a rough childhood. She was in a foster home, she was at an orphanage, and was taken away many times by foster parents, but always returned. So she's kind of got a chip on her shoulder about people and not getting too close to people and being rejected, but she turned those feelings into success later in life, and is all over the place in terms of wheeling and dealing and owning companies and all that stuff. However, she is brought down on a charge of insider trading, I believe it is, and is sentenced to prison. When she gets out, she, or I think it's after no, is it before she goes? I don't remember, but either way, she, her former assistant Claire, who is played by Kristen Bell, has to quit obviously when Michelle is sentenced to go to jail, because she's not going to be able to pay her, so she has to quit and get a new job and whatnot. So I think it's after she gets out of prison, Michelle comes looking for Claire to kind of help her out. She has nowhere to stay and stuff like that, so Claire reluctantly takes Michelle in, and Michelle, after a little while, starts hitting it off with Claire's young daughter Rachel, in a kind of weird, kind of inappropriate kind of way, and she ends up taking Rachel to her like girl troop meeting, which I think the group is called the Dandelions, and she gets there and is like, who's this mom all about? She's a real bitch and stuff like that. And so she starts taking control of these meetings, and gets into confrontations with various people in the group, and on the subject of selling cookies to support the group. She's like, well, where's all this money going that they make on these cookies? And what? So she comes up with this scheme after Claire bakes these awesome brownies to make a new troupe called Darnell's Darlings and sell these brownies for profit, and eventually put the profit back into all the girls that are in the troupe for scholarship or college education later on down the road, something like that. So she develops this business plan, and she wants Claire to quit her new job, which she hates, and bake full-time for Darnell's Darlings and start this new business venture with Michelle. And eventually Claire comes around and goes, yeah, this is a great idea, I quit. And they start off and everything's going well, despite some hiccups along the way, until one day Rachel gives Michelle a gift when they go out for lunch, and suddenly Michelle's like, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm way too close to this family, and panics and hits the road, and eventually talks to a business rival named Renault or Ronald, depending on who you're asking, and eventually sells Darnell's Darlings to him. And immediately afterwards is thinking about it and regrets it, and she knows she's an asshole and stuff like that. Claire and Rachel are both devastated, and so in the end, Michelle has a crisis of conscience, realizes she's done wrong, and comes up with a scheme to get Darnell's Darlings back and make everything right and become a better person in the end. So I love Melissa McCarthy. For some reason, my wife loves Gilmore Girls, and when we were much younger, very earlier on in our relationship, for some reason I love that show as well. When she was watching it, I could not stop watching it, and there's just something about it. It's not the normal type of TV show I like, but for some reason that show really grabbed my attention, and I love watching it. And that was my first exposure to Melissa McCarthy, which is such a different character than she plays in a lot of her comedies, right? Like, she's just this wholesome kind of chef, with Lorelai, and she's kind of very good-natured and stuff, but you see her in these movies like Identity Thief and The Boss, and she's kind of an asshole, right? But a funny asshole and a likable asshole, and she's just such a good actor, and of course some of her physical comedy is just hilarious, right? So I really enjoy her performances and all the stuff she does, and this is definitely not an exception. This is another great performance by her, and we enjoyed it very much. So next up, I got a couple games to finish this off. First up, Killzone Shadowfall on the PS4, a greatest hits thing. This was originally released in 2013, I believe it was, so I think this must have been a PS3 title originally. I've only played one game in the Killzone franchise, which was on the PSP many years ago, so I'm not very familiar with the overall story, but I've just always really liked the look and the feel of this franchise and stuff. So when I saw this for super cheap, I was like, yes, please. Anyways, it's after the events of Killzone 3, I think it is, when Helghast, the world, or Helgen, or whatever the world is that the Helghast live on, becomes uninhabitable during the events of Killzone 3. So what's happened is the ISA has allowed the Helgen refugees to settle on Vecta. They've given them basically half the planet, I think, as theirs, and the other half will remain Vectin. And they built a wall kind of separating the two factions, because there's lots of tensions between the two factions, obviously, because they've been at war for so long. So early on in this, you see a young kid named Lucas Kellen trying to escape New Helgen and get over the wall to Vecta, and his father's helping lead the way, and he's a soldier in the marshals or whatever, but he ends up getting killed, and a soldier named Sinclair helps Lucas get back over the wall. And then we see a montage of future events as Lucas becomes a marshal himself, becomes very effective, develops this relationship with Sinclair, who eventually becomes his commanding officer, and he does many things to help aid the reignited war that's going on, over the wall sort of thing, right? So this game takes place after Lucas has become this very capable marshal, and Sinclair gives him all these orders to try and win the war for the Vectins against the Helghast. And so lots of things happen. He has to go over the wall again and stop this lady named Massar, who's developing some sort of secret weapon for the Helgens that is going to make things messy. There's also a terrorist group led by this guy, I can't remember his name, so you have to go after him. And then all during this, there's a girl named Echo who comes on your radar and helps you escape once you get held captive on New Helgen. And she's half Helgen, half Vectin, and she makes you see things a different way, which changes your approach and ruins your relationship with Sinclair, and drastically alters how the end of the game kind of goes based on how you thought it would go from the start of the game. So it's a first-person shooter. There's some sneaking around. There's also a lot of action. A lot of challenging moments, a lot of challenging boss fights. I had a real hard time in some spots. As if you're watching my gameplay footage, you'll see hear a lot of cursing during some of the sequences there. But fairly short game, only 9 or 10 missions. But they are, like I said, a lot of them later on are pretty difficult. So you do get your value out of the game in the end. But the game looked amazing, really cool vistas and graphics, and it played fairly well too. And overall, I highly enjoyed it. So it's cheap. If you like that kind of thing, that kind of first-person shooter, pick it up.